For those who don't know me, I'm Michael Goldberg, and we're also streaming on LinkedIn Live, so I know people are joining that way. And I'm the executive director of our Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship and a professor at Weatherhead. And this is going to be a fun one today. We're featuring our friend and Veale entrepreneur in residence, Allison Girvin. We were joking before, for those who are joining, making small talk. So Jack Davies, who is with us today, was my boss when I worked at America Online. And Jack, as you can appreciate with a lot of our young people today, when I introduce myself, I'm like, I worked at this company, AOL, kind of like Google. You may have heard of it. Not everybody remembers AOL days, but Jack was our head of AOL International and a mentor and friend, and introduced me when his niece, cousin, Allison, was moving to Cleveland, was nice enough to introduce us to Allison. We've kept Allison really busy on campus. So Allison is teaching in our SAGES program, is an entrepreneur in residence, has been a great asset. We're so happy to have her and Nick in Cleveland. Obviously not getting to see each other as much as we like to, but we're thrilled to have her today. So welcome to the Girvin Davies family and everybody who's watching. We will turn it over to Allison. These things are very interactive, so we'll put you to work. Obviously, if you're here on Zoom and want to ask questions, please do. And if you're on LinkedIn Live, just post in our comment section and we will make sure we bring the questions over. So with that, I will turn it over to Allison.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. It's great to, this is what I get when I put it on my personal Facebook page, is half my family joins. So it's nice to have everyone in the peanut gallery. A little bit of background on me first as we get started. I have worked in national media for 20 years, and both television and digital. I moved into digital back in 2012 after having done TV for 10 years, because I knew it was really the wave of the future and how we were going to communicate with each other and with the masses and reach our audiences really going forward. And so I went to the Huffington Post, where I launched HuffPost Live, which is, well, it was the first video streaming channel for news. Now everyone has one, but at the time it was very ahead of its game. And that's where I really learned about audience building, because we built it from scratch. We built the back end, we built the platform, we built the front end, the website, we built the mobile app, and there was no audience for it. Of course, there was an audience for Huffington Post, but there was no audience for HuffPost Live, and we had to really draw people over. And as we went farther into it, we realized that the biggest promoter of online content, the easiest way for you to reach the widest audience possible is through social media, because everyone is on a social media platform. We're on a social media platform now too, actually. And so that's really the best way to pull your audience in. So I'm going to be talking a lot about social media in this hour. And if anyone has any questions as we go along, just raise your hand and let me know, or speak up, because I'm going to share my screen so I won't be able to see you all. All right. So the first thing I always ask people is, what is your goal? We're looking at entrepreneurs today and companies. So what is the goal of your company? What is your goal online? What is your goal in wanting to reach a digital audience? Are you looking to advertise a product or service? Are you looking to sell a product or service? Or are you looking to generate some buzz and conversation around your product or service? Because all three of these things are going to have, you're going to use your digital audience in different ways for this, and you're going to go after different audiences, obviously, for this. So the first thing you really have to identify is, with your website and with your digital media presence, which includes all digital media platforms. So your website, your mobile platforms, and all your social media presence. And, keep in mind, maybe you only are on social media when you start and you don't have, a mobile app, or maybe you just have a mobile app. So whatever your platform is, what is the goal? And that is the absolute first thing to identify. And maybe you have multiple goals. Maybe in the first, iteration of your effort, you really want just to generate some PR around whatever it is your company does. Maybe your second goal is to sell said product or service. But identify what the main thing is you want to achieve when you set out to go online. And then you have to know who your audience is. So this is critical because I think a lot of people think a digital media strategy is to just open up a LinkedIn account or open up a Facebook account and just start talking about whatever it is you do. If your audience isn't on Facebook, it makes absolutely no sense for you to be on Facebook. If your audience isn't on Twitter, then you don't want to be on Twitter. So I work for a consulting firm and our audience is not on Facebook. We mostly work with businesses and with other media professionals, PR professionals. They are not on Facebook. They might be on Facebook to share pictures of their kids with grandma, but they're not on Facebook for work. And so it really doesn't make any sense for us to put time and effort and energy into building a Facebook presence when our clients aren't there. They're not looking for us there. But it does make sense for us to build a LinkedIn presence because they are there. And because we are reaching out to PR professionals, it makes sense to have a Twitter presence because PR professionals are on Twitter. So you really need to identify who your audience is. Are you, going back to the goals, are you trying to sell something? If you're trying to sell something, who are you trying to sell it to? And where is that audience? If you're trying to sell it to college kids, then maybe you want to be on Snapchat. If you're trying to sell it to moms, then maybe you do want to be on Facebook. If you're trying to sell it to PR officials, then maybe you want to be on Twitter. So you really need to know who you're trying to reach and what that target is. And I know that kind of sounds like a duh, but again, a lot of people go with just the fire hose method of reaching out on digital media and trying to, oh, I have 5,000 followers. That's amazing. But if those 5,000 people are the wrong people, then it doesn't matter that you have 5,000 followers. It's better to have 500 of the right people than 5,000 of the wrong people. So identify who that audience is. Then you really need to talk about what are your resources. So this is something that I've talked about with Case and with the Veale Institute is what are your resources? And resources are manpower, money, and time. How much manpower do you have to put into your digital audience building or your social media presence or your online presence? Do you have the ability to hire someone who does just that or several someones? Do you have the money to pay for that? Are you doing it yourself? How much time do you want to designate to doing this? If someone on your team is doing it, how much, but they're juggling multiple jobs, wearing multiple hats, how much time do you want them to spend on building out your social media presence? Because, I joke with my team now that you can have one person on your digital media team, or you could have 100 people on your digital media team, and we'd find something for them to do. The internet is bottomless. Like, you never get to the end of the internet where you're like, okay, I've read it all. I've seen it all. I've done it all. You can generate an infinite amount of content online. So you really need to look at what your goal is, what your audience is, and who you have to really dedicate toward the effort of building out this digital platform and building out your plan and building out your audience. And if you only have one person who can only dedicate 5 hours a week to this, you're going to have a very different strategy than if you have 5 people who dedicate 100% of their time to this. So once you do all that, you know what your goal is, you know who your audience is, and you know what kind of resources you have. You want to look at what platforms work best for you. And I put some up here that are really the most common. LinkedIn is huge, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and then some other ones that people don't always think of: Slack, WhatsApp, Reddit, Medium, Tumblr. Again, it goes back to what is your product or service and what is your goal with that product or service? What is your goal with your digital presence? Because the audience you're going to find on LinkedIn is very different from the audience you're going to find on Instagram, which is very different from the audience you're going to find on Reddit. One of the reasons I also tell people to pick one, start with one, is because of that resource issue. All of these different things, and there's 20 additional social media platforms that aren't on here. All of these different things require different kinds of content. You don't put the same thing on Instagram as you would on Slack, and you don't put the same thing on LinkedIn as you would on YouTube. So if you really wanted to have a presence on several of these platforms, you're looking at having to generate 5 different versions of the same content based on the audience you're going to find on that platform, which takes a lot of resources and a lot of time, and resources and time, people, manpower and time cost money. So pick your platform, start with one. And if you feel like, okay, I can do maybe a little bit more, I can do LinkedIn and Twitter, because LinkedIn I only post to twice or 3 times a week. Twitter I'm posting to 3 times a day. I can handle that based on my time and my resources and my manpower. Then okay, maybe you do too. But don't bite off more than you can chew. That is, again, going back to that fire hose approach is the absolute worst thing that you can do, because spreading yourself too thin across too many platforms is not going to allow you to build an audience. It's better to have a huge audience on one platform than a little tiny audience on 10 platforms. So focus on what platform is going to work best for you. And again, you really want to pick the platform based on where your audience is. So who are you trying to reach and where do they live? You're probably not going to reach B2B kind of companies and marketing officials or PR officials on Instagram. That's probably not where you want to put your time and energy. So, but if you're trying to sell something to, 30 somethings, by all means, Instagram is definitely double down there. So you really want to figure out where your audience is and then pick one of these platforms to start with. Then know that content is king. Once you figure out, you've identified your goal, you've identified your audience, you know how much time and energy and effort and money and resources you have to put toward this, you've picked one platform that you're going to focus on. Now know that content is king. People will find the good content. This is something that we say in media and have said in media forever. If you build it, they will come. So you really want to focus on quality. Again, some of these platforms like Twitter are more designed for a constant stream of content. It's just a constant flow. LinkedIn is more curated and more specific. And, you don't have to, it's not expecting a content dump every couple hours. So you can be a little bit more strategic and slow with it. But you want to make sure that you're not putting up junk, that the content that you're creating is content that people want to see, because that is what's going to get them to follow you. And that is what's going to get them to come back, is I saw something really cool on this feed, or they were doing something really cool here. So how do you make good content? Well, I put this in kind of order of preference. For most platforms, video is the end all be all. Not necessarily Twitter. You don't necessarily need that on Twitter, but for the most part, people tend to engage with video and watch video more than they do just plain text, which is at the bottom of the list. So back in the day, if you remember, those of us who were back on early Facebook, there were no photos, there were no videos. It was just what you were doing. And that was so exciting and interesting. And now, when was the last time you were on Facebook where someone didn't post a photo or a video? People never just write a sentence on Facebook. So we've come a long way in the evolution of Facebook in just 10 years, 12 years. But really, video is going to get you the biggest bang for your buck. It's also the most expensive, though. So going back to those resources, you really need to kind of say, what do I have in me? How much time and money and energy do I have to spend just on video? And make sure you use it in a smart way. Infographics are fantastic. People also like infographics. Infographics are a step above photos because they tend to have a little bit more information and a little bit, sometimes they're interactive. Photos are great. People like photos. Then sharing other people's content, retweeting it, sharing and retweets are the same. The last bottom thing is just plain text. You want to give people something. You want to give them a video to watch. You want to give them a photo to engage with, an infographic to engage with, a link to click on. All of that is important, not only because people like it better. So you're going to be building your audience because they like that content better, but also because in the online digital media world of algorithms, the more people engage with your content, the more your content is pushed up in the feeds. So if people are going to engage more with video and they're going to engage more with photos than they are text, you want to double down on the stuff that they're going to engage with, just because that means that the platforms are going to make those preferred things that they see in the feed. And what do I mean by engagement? We'll talk about this in a little bit, but just as I mentioned it, for those who don't know, engagement is sharing, liking, or commenting on content. And the algorithms on social media platforms love when people engage with content. In fact, we look at engagement rates now over page views, because a page view doesn't tell us much information. A page view means maybe you landed on it. Who knows if you read it? Who knows how long you stayed? Who knows how deep you got? But if you comment, like, or share that, we know that you actually paid enough attention to comment, like, or share. And that is valuable to us when it comes to, okay, someone saw it and it consumed my content. So you want to focus on video, infographics, photos. Think visuals. So what makes content go viral? And again, a lot of businesses have websites, and websites are great, but landing pages are not often used. I mean, really, people very rarely, let's look at like the New York Times. People very rarely go in and type in www.newyorktimes.com. 80% of the traffic comes through social. Someone has followed them, liked them on a social media platform. About 15% comes through search. So they type in presidential election and a New York Times article pops up. And only 5% is typically people who go to the site and type it in. So if you have a website, that's great, but people aren't going to just go there. You have to drive them there. And that's why we talk about social media being so important, is you want to push them to your website or push them to your mobile app. And social media really will do that. So the content that you create for social media, to make it go viral, these are the 5 big things: emotional, authentic, relatable, surprising, new. So let's unpack a little bit of this. Emotional. So this can be positive or negative emotion. Anything emotion. You can make me laugh. You can make me cry, tug on my heartstrings. You can make me angry. Like, I find this outrageous. You can make me shocked. But you want to go for emotion. And depending on what it is you do, and depending on who you're, what service or good you're selling or who you're trying to reach, emotion might be a challenge. If you're a software guy, how do you make software emotional? But your post around it can be emotional. Your post around it can be pithy or funny or witty or, really smart. So emotional doesn't have to be, the crazy dancing cat or the cute baby. Emotional can be poignant, or it can be, like I said, funny. It can be something really smart around your content that you're trying to push out. So maybe you have a video about your software, or you have an infographic about your app, and you're putting in the text something that kind of is a little emotional. Authentic. People on the internet are very fast to sniff out fake stuff. They want it to feel like you're letting them in behind the curtain. You're letting them look under the hood. You're taking them inside to the way the sausage is really made. You want it to be real. Don't get too big for your britches. Don't try to be something you're not. Don't try to oversell yourself. You really want to be authentic. And if you're just starting out and you're kind of the underdog, you know, that's something you can sell. That's a story you can sell. But too much shiny and too much production is actually not a good thing online. People like the raw and the real. Relatable. They like to feel like, okay, I can relate to this guy. He could be my brother. He could be my next door neighbor. You know, he could be my dad. This content is relatable. I get where he's coming from. So let's say you have a startup and you're really struggling to pull the money together. You know, I think often we really try to fake it till we make it, right? We wear the suit and we act like we already have landed in the C-suite. And, you know, they sniff that out so fast on the internet. It's more relatable to be like, I have gone to 120 meetings and begged for money and no one has given it to me, but I keep on trucking. You know, people like that. They like that relatability and that honesty and that realness because they get it. They're in the same boat. Surprising. So people like to be surprised online. It doesn't happen all that often. So when you can do it, it's very endearing and it brings along a lot of goodwill. And so surprise me, tell me something I don't know. And then new, of course. So if what you're doing is new and innovative and interesting and exciting and different, you want to play that up 100%, because that is, you know, in this world, it's hard to surprise us, and we don't see a lot of new stuff all that often. So you want to play up the new angle. So then you've identified your audience, you have your platform, you're making your content. How do you build that community? How do you get people to come to you? How do you get them to know that you exist? You know, I always tell people you need to go to your community so your community will come to you. Where are they? Maybe your community is at the Veale Institute. Maybe your community is your alumni group at CASE. Maybe your community is your former colleagues at, you know, your previous jobs. Maybe your community is a industry organization or a club or whatever it is. You need to go to that community. So you want to follow all of that, you know, identify all those groups and follow them on social media, but particularly on the platform where you are. So if you've decided I'm going to double down on Twitter, then you need to go find all the people on Twitter in your community and start engaging with their content so that they see you, they know you, follow them, comment, retweet. If you're on Facebook, same thing. If you're on LinkedIn, same thing. Go where they are and draw them into you and show them, hey, I'm here. One of the ways that we build a community is by that engagement. And again, I'm going to talk about engagement a little bit more farther in, but people want to know that you're not just a bot or that it's not just an automatic response. You know, I get a question a lot with Twitter. Should I set up an automatic thank you when someone follows me on Twitter? And the answer is hard no, absolutely not. They will, again, it goes back to that authenticity and that relatability. They will sniff that out so fast and be like, you couldn't even bother to send me a direct message. So know your platform and know the snark and know what they don't like and what they do like. You can literally Google 10 things to never do on Facebook or 10 things to never do on Twitter, 10 things to never do on LinkedIn. And it will tell you the etiquette of that platform and what that platform is used to and what it isn't used to. You know, every different platform kind of has its own voice. So Facebook is like the nice one. That's where all the moms are and they're kind and gentle sort of groups in the closed communities that you'd be going after. Usually there's a lot of rules, you know, everyone has to play nice, don't talk politics, yada, yada. You know, Reddit's the exact opposite. It's like bring out the knives. So know the community voice or the rules and etiquette of that platform and make sure you adhere to them and know how they interact with each other. Inundate. So one of the most effective ways to get your message across online is to repeat it over and over and over and over again. And when you've done all that, you do it again. But don't ruin the user experience. So it's like, people always say, but I don't understand. You're saying I'm supposed to hit people over the head with this 15 times a day, but don't actually tell them anything more because they're going to get exhausted and hate you and unfollow you. This goes back to know your platform. So in the Twitterverse, you can tweet something out over and over and over and over and over again, and it's not going to annoy anyone. LinkedIn, not so much. Twitter, you can tweet 15 times a day. You can tweet 100 times a day, and it's not going to annoy anyone. LinkedIn, if you start putting up 100 things a day, people are going to unfollow you real fast. So you do definitely want to know the threshold on your particular platform, but you want to push that inundation right up to that ledge, because most people don't look at everything. And most people have a very short attention span. The average time that someone spends on a piece of content on the internet, any piece of content, average time is 8 seconds. You have them for 8 seconds. And they wonder why we're all so ADD. So in that 8 seconds, you better grab them. And if you don't grab them, you need to go after them again and hope that you'll grab them the next time or the next time or the next time. So know, all right, what do I think my community will tolerate? How many posts a day or a week can I do before I'm going to ruin the user experience and push it all the way up to that edge? Engagement, engagement, engagement. So the absolute best thing that you can do to build your community is to engage with it. That means when someone follows you, you thank them with a personal direct message, or you retweet something that they have posted and say, thanks for the follow. When when someone posts something on your LinkedIn post, you reply to it. You go to their page or their posts and you comment and like them. That interaction is what builds the goodwill and makes them realize that you're a legitimate player in this space. It also games the algorithms. The more you engage with content, the more you like and share and comment on the other comments and the other folks that are on your platform, the more you're pushed up in that platform's algorithm. They look at you and go, oh, this person is really engaged in talking a lot, and they interact a lot, and they will push your content up. Because why do all these platforms love the engagement? They love the engagement because the more you engage, the more you comment, the more you like, the more you share stuff, the longer you're on the platform. And that's what they want. They want people to stay on the platform for as long as possible. So if you're generating content that people engage with, they're passing that 8-second average, right? It takes a little bit more than 8 seconds to write a post or to share it onto their page. So that tells the platform, hey, this person's generating really good content that people like and engage with, which is going to keep those people on the site longer. So I'm going to push their content up and get it out there in front of more feeds, put it in front of more eyeballs, in the hopes that more people will stay and engage and spend more time on the platform. So it's all a game. It's all really how do you game the system to get the most out of it as possible. So if you want to see this in real time, first find your voice. So this is really important. Most social media efforts and digital media efforts fail because they're just kind of bleh. Think of what you follow online. Think of the people that you go back to. Think of when you're on a platform and you actually type in a handle to go look at that person's content. What is it about them that draws you to them? And usually it's because they have a particular style, or in digital lingo speak, it's having a voice. The voice of, let's say, Vanity Fair. If you go to Vanity Fair social media page, their voice is very distinct and very different from the voice of, let's say, the Washington Post, which is very different from the voice of the Huffington Post. So same thing with companies. Companies have a distinct voice. Some companies are fun. Some companies are serious. Some companies enjoy making fun of themselves and they laugh at themselves. Some companies are really snarky. You have to find your voice and what works for you. And you really have to base that on your audience. What is your audience going to enjoy? Is your audience going to enjoy the snark? If they're not, if that's going to turn them off, that should definitely not be your voice. Does your audience enjoy the nerdy? Like, I'm going to totally geek out on this thing? Then double down on that. That can be your voice. But you need to have something that gives you a little bit of edginess, a little bit of that star power that takes you away from just the bland, here's the facts, and elevates you into, okay, this person's kind of interesting. This is someone I'd like to talk about their product or service with. They sound kind of cool. And then if you want to watch this happen in real time. So I just signed on with media strategy experts to help them build their digital media presence. And we're starting with Twitter. And I literally started the Twitter account yesterday. So if you want to watch this happen in real time, our audience is PR professionals, crisis communication folks. So they are on Twitter. All publicists are on Twitter. We are not going after, we are selling a service to them. Let us help you with your crisis. Let us help you with your communications problem for your company. And we are trying to build out a Twitter presence that shows them what we can do on social media, so that we can say to them, hey, you want us to help you with your social media? Go look at our social media sites and you can see kind of what our vibe is and what we do. So our audience is, it's Twitter, so we can post pretty often, several times a day. One of the first things I did was identify, and I'm still doing this because it does take a long time. The internet is big, it is bottomless, and there are a lot of people on there, and it does take a long time to curate this. So I'm doing a little bit every day and between other things, because my resources and my time and my money are split between 15 things. This is not my full-time job. So I have decided I'll dedicate about an hour a day to doing this. And one of the first things I did was, all right, who are all the people that I want to follow who have content that's like my content that our audience might be interested in? So I went and followed a bunch of social media organizations and other social media experts. And then I went through our client list who we've done work with in the past. And there's more than 500 people on this list. And I'm going and looking up every single one of their Twitter handles. Do they have a Twitter account? I will follow them. They've worked with us in the past. Maybe they'll follow us back to build up that presence. Right now we have like 10 followers because, like I said, I literally launched this yesterday. So I don't have to worry too terribly about making sure I have a steady stream of content. No one's looking at it yet. But I do have to put enough content up there so that as I build it, when people do come to our Twitter feed and they look, they're like, oh, there's stuff in here. And it's not just 2 tweets. And they see that we have a consistent presence. And okay, we'll follow them. This is interesting stuff. So if you want to watch this in real time, by all means, follow experts_media on Twitter, and you can sort of see the slow build. I think one of the biggest takeaways is this does not happen overnight. You do not build a digital audience overnight unless you have some wow, you get $50 million and you buy an ad in the Super Bowl. All right, you could probably build your digital media presence overnight. But absent of that, it's a slow build, and it's consistency every single day, putting a little bit toward it, going out and identifying the strategic stakeholders who can help you. So as we build out our Twitter platform, we're going to follow the folks that have worked with us in the past, and then we will call or email and say, hey, to our most important clients, will you give us a follow back? Would you post something about us, or would you mention our account on your Twitter feed? And identifying those key stakeholders and asking them for a favor is sort of phase 2 of building out our Twitter presence. So, it's going to take a while, and we have realistic goals. We don't expect to have tens of thousands of followers in the next month, but I think slow and steady wins the race, and generating interesting content that people care about matters, and making sure that everything that you post, unless it's super pithy and witty and funny, there are some social media accounts that have these young kids who are super funny, who just react to the news. It reminds me of, remember the lights went out during a NBA game or something, and Oreo did this really funny thing about dunking in the dark. You can still dunk your Oreo in the dark, and it just went viral, and it was like crazy good, and it was in the moment. Like the news did a profile on, it was like some 23-year-old kid who just was in charge of Oreo's Twitter feed that night, and just hit it out of the park and went gangbuster crazy. Like 8 million people followed them in the next 24 hours. So those things do happen. They are the exception, not the norm. So slow and steady, just good, consistent content, hitting some of those things that I've talked about in the last 40 minutes. So there you go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anyone have any questions?
I became your 8th follower on Twitter.
Good.
I had the Veale Institute follow too.
Thank you. Watch the magic happen. Does anyone else have any questions?
I'll kick it off, and I'm excited to encourage everybody else to join. There's so much to unpack there, Allison, and it's helpful because I think many of us, whether we're doing this from a university perspective, we're building our own personal brands. One of the things we struggle with, even like for events like this, like we're streaming on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, people's ability to go live, for wherever they are. How do you advise folks? Because to me, it's interesting that you start with video. Mm-hmm. You've been doing this for a long time, and now everybody, including our kids, are sort of, everybody's shooting video. It's so easy to post video, but doing it in a way, and this is something that Sophia and a bunch of us here talk about, like, how do you do it in a way, because it's so hard to get people's attention. Like, how do you sort of not overdo it? Because putting video up is so easy. Mm-hmm. With a lot of hour-long sessions and different things. So how do you advise doing that dance?
Well, I think live is actually a very effective tool because it generates video. It's the easiest way to generate video. You don't have to shoot anything, you don't have to make anything, you don't have to do anything. You just do a live. You can cut it up pretty easily into little chunks. So if you don't want to put an hour-long streaming, or an hour-long thing on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on a social media platform, you can cut little 15-second or even 2-minute chunks out of it very easily. It's very cost-effective. I often tell people to start with live because of that very reason. It's much harder to generate video from scratch that you produce than it is to go live. But to your point, we are inundated with it right now in this COVID world. So you are fighting all the other people that are also doing live. I mean, I get something in my email every day. It's like the museums are doing something, the Playhouse Square is doing something, the Cavs are doing something, Michael Simon's doing something. It's like, we can take cooking lessons, we can do it. It's just too much. I do think that's a unique to this time problem. I also think that what you do is do your live, and if two people show up, take the, record it, take what you've got on tape and cut it up and put it out there in little smaller digestible nuggets. Most people aren't going to watch an hour-long thing. You guys are all very generous with your time. Most people, they'll watch 30 seconds, maybe 90 seconds if it's super compelling. So take that hour, do your live, take that hour or that 30 minutes and cut it into more digestible pieces. It also allows you to spread it out over several days, or over, 10 posts, depending on how much content you get. And it's a very easy, quick, cheap way to get video. And I wouldn't worry about the actual live part of it, of how many people were there live. It's just like in television, we no longer really care about ratings live. We care about how many people streamed it ultimately, or how many people watched it on DVR, or, does it really matter if you watched it from 5 to 6 on Friday or from 7 to 8 on Saturday? No, it matters that you watched it.
Thanks, Allison. What other questions do folks have?
Anyone?
Yeah, I joined a little bit late, I'm sorry, but I just was wondering, is there some kind of an expectation or some kind of a timetable that you could expect some meaningful following and meaningful results?
Sure. So that's a very hard question to answer, because if it's just you and you're doing an hour a week, kind of like right now, it's just me and I'm doing an hour a day, that's going to be very different than if you hire, 5 people to work on your digital media strategy. I do think if it's just you, and you do it consistently, and you do put some time into it, consistent time into it, so about an hour a day, you should be able to see a steady stream and get up into the several thousands within a short amount of time, within a month or two. And then, of course, it becomes easier and starts moving faster once you get there. It's that first 1,000 is the hardest, and then the second 1,000 is easier, and the third 1,000's easier, and the fourth 1,000's easier. It's that slow burn in the beginning, because as you get more followers, more people start to share your content, more people start to engage with your content, which pushes it up in the algorithm, and so it becomes easier once you have a little bit of ground under you. There are ways to get followers faster. You can buy them. I don't usually recommend that because of that authenticity issue. But you can hire firms and that will do this for you. And they basically have an army of people who just engage and like and share and generate content and will do the video, and you pay them to manage your accounts for you. And there are services that just get you off the ground and then hand it over to you once it's up and running. But again, that takes money, and that might not be where you want to spend your resources, especially as you're building something. You can hire individual people. I actually know of people who do this for a living. All they do is they are content engagers. They are social media content engagers. They sit at home and they have their however many accounts that pay them. It's cheaper to do it this way than to go through an agency. And they have your password and your account, and they engage with anyone who comments. You generate the content, you post it. They just engage with anyone who comments or interacts with you, with your content. Because again, that helps with the algorithm. So there are different ways to sort of futz with it. If it's you by yourself and you're consistently putting in an hour a day, I would say you could get, it also depends on you. It depends on what you're hawking. It depends on what you're selling. It depends on what you're putting out there. It depends on the quality of the content.
That was actually, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is actually was my follow-up in terms of the quality, and some of them is when talking about authenticity, but we're talking about professional versus not professional. Yeah, everybody could shoot a video, everybody could talk, and everybody could provide, produce content, right? But then there is content, and then there is, then there is something that people enjoy watching, people enjoy to follow, they kind of anticipating or they like the presentation. And then there is something that just looks like it's a personal brand. Yeah, personal brand, I understand that. But when you're building a professional brand, you're building a company, at what point, when do you kind of either flip, or at what point do you start right away professional? That balance.
So I think, and that's hard to answer too, because the threshold is going to be different for everyone. There are some people who feel like building your digital media presence is incredibly important, and you put that money up front and you get out there so that as you generate interest and you generate business, there's a place for them to land. Certainly, you can't go out there and talk about your product or service these days and not have a website. So most people are going to start at the very least before they sell anything, before they have any business whatsoever, they're going to have a website. So that's upfront costs you're going to be putting in no matter what. As far as building the digital presence, it's so specific on what you're doing. If you are creating an app for a company that has basically paid you for this app, and they want, you're going to be doing your business with this company, and that the bulk of your business is going to be with this one entity, you might not need to go generate a bunch of social media presence to get more clients in. You're doubling down on this one guy who's got deep pockets, where you start here and you're just going to keep building and working for him. If you're trying to mass produce something or sell something to a lot of people, then you're going to want to put that money up front into building a professional digital operation online right out of the gate, because you're selling a product to anyone out there who will buy it. You don't just have one client. You want to be able to sell this to 5,000 people in the next 2 months or whatever. So I think the strategy depends on what it is you're doing, who your audience is, who you're trying to reach, and it's really so case by case dependent. I would say email me afterwards and tell me your specific thing, and I'll give you some advice.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have time for one more question. Sophia?
Yeah, I can ask. I know we've already talked a little bit about Veale accounts, specifically when it comes to social media. And while we are doing our best to differentiate content across platforms, and this goes for the other departments I work for too, it's challenging because there's just only so many people, like you said, manpower behind creating the content. But what we have been doing is, and I hope this is this the right way, is, kind of having a different voice on different platforms, whereas Instagram, we're really talking to students, so it's far more casual compared to LinkedIn, where we're more professional, and Twitter, where we're more like thought-provoking. Is that something you recommend? Like how?
Absolutely. So, if, as I was saying, I normally tell people to pick one platform, because you can easily spread yourself too thin, and you can easily sort of get to a place where you're giving, you're not giving 100% to any of it. And so, but if you are going to do multiple platforms, and you do feel like you have the resources and time and energy to do multiple platforms, you absolutely need to cater the content for that platform. So, some of that is super obvious, like YouTube, you have to do video, right? And some of it is a little bit more nuanced. You're absolutely right. Instagram is going to be far more casual than a LinkedIn. And you have to know that audience and know that if you put your LinkedIn content on Instagram, it's just going to go right. Their eyes are going to glaze over. Whereas if you put your Instagram content on LinkedIn, it's going to be a little too glib, and people are going to wonder, what are they doing? This doesn't feel like it makes sense here. This doesn't fit here. So you absolutely want to cater your content for each platform. And what I usually tell folks is do the most complicated one first. So if it's a video, do the video that's for LinkedIn. That's the complicated one. That's a super professional one. That's the one that's going to take all the whiz bang, effort, and then slice and dice it in the way you need to for the other platforms.
We've been taking your advice on that, and I think
well, because otherwise you'll end up shooting the same thing 3 different times, which doesn't make sense. That's a waste of time and effort. So shoot it for the most serious, important one, and figure out a way to mold that material into the fun, more casual ones.
Right. Thank you.
And another way, to your point, Michael, another way to generate some content that's free and easy is to, once you get some followers, ask for user-generated content. Ask for students' photos, ask for, let them do the heavy lifting, let them do the work. And you can filter all that. You can, decide what you want to use or not use. And it's kind of an easy tool. It also really improves engagement, because they're more likely to engage with content that they give you and share it with all their friends and share it with all their followers than they are your own content.
Great. Well, great advice. Well, thank you. We're at almost at 4:00 Eastern time. So thank you, Allison, for doing this today. We're
Pleasure.
really lucky to have you in our Case Western Reserve / Cleveland family. And thank you to your family, Ian, Jack, and Steve, for joining us today. It's great to have you guys here. We're, again, pleased that your Cleveland roots are back here with Allison's presence. So,
and please, Michael, feel free to share my email. And if anyone has any specific questions, I'm happy to hop on a Zoom with you one-on-one and talk to you, at a later time.